The wait for the Matric results.
CJ, for the Matric class of 2019, the IEB or private school results will be out at midnight on Monday, and those at public schools who wrote the National Senior Certificate exams will know their fate at midnight on Tuesday. Right, well, for more on this, we're now joined by education expert, Professor Mary Metcalf. Prof, always a pleasure to have you here on SABC News. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, as a start, what are you expecting to hear when the Minister of Basic Education gets up on that podium on Tuesday?
I always find the Matric announcement a very interesting event in the psyche of the country because the primary focus needs to be on the many learners who will be celebrating. We need to acknowledge their efforts, but we also need to be very conscious of the many that have fallen along the way. And the expectation that there's going to be a figure that tells us how our system is doing, I think is not helpful. Our Matric results have been improving steadily over the last 10 years. What we know from international assessments is that the improvements in the lower grades means we can expect to see ongoing improvements in the NSC slowly over time. So we're going to be close to 80%, but that shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be the main story.
Yeah, we're always sort of hearing people talking about, the differences between the results of the IEB and the public schools. What must be done if, when we see that gap? What indeed should the Department of Basic Education be doing in order to sort of bridge that gap? And I do hear you saying that the Matric results are seemingly improving steadily over the years.
Well, the IEB results being substantially better than the results that we get in the DBE schools nationally is exactly the same issue as we see in the interprovincial comparisons, because everything that we know from education research internationally is that education performance correlates with socioeconomic background.
Yeah.
Whichever country you're in, students from wealthier homes do better than students from poorer homes. So the IEB is a particular subsection of students in the country. On the whole, from wealthier families who at least have found a disposable income to register their children in private schools. Public schools, children from the same group socioeconomically do just as well. But in public schools, we've got large numbers of children from poorer families, so their poorer performance brings the results down. And that's where our attention should be, on the children from poorer families who need education to change their life chances. And that is why the interprovincial comparison becomes interesting. Some provinces are significantly poorer than other provinces, and the significantly poorer provinces come lower down in the provincial ranking. And we need to stop celebrating the success of the wealthy provinces as if it is entirely to do with the work of the leadership. The work of the leadership is critical, but actually the energy needs to be focused on the poorest learners so that the life chances of them, their families and their communities can change.
Yeah. And I think, when I listen to what you're saying, is it correct to say that, children from or learners from poorer schools and poorer backgrounds should be more celebrated at this time, as more effort is certainly required of them to achieve than those from the wealthier sort of backgrounds, because they don't have all the essentials that are required for them to thrive. They themselves have to put extra effort for them to thrive. Is that not correct?
I love what you're saying, and in fact that's what we should be celebrating, is the people and the individuals who overcome the very negative odds under which they're schooling. And those need to be acknowledged and celebrated. But systemically, if we're going to change the future of this country, we need to know that not everyone has the gumption, the agency to change the circumstances which are so personally debilitating. As a country, we've got to say the bottom three provinces whose results will come out on Wednesday They account for 62% of the learners in this country. If we focus on the small provinces that are doing well, and we don't remember that the poorest learners are leaving school prematurely, not succeeding, then our country is on a very negative trajectory.
Yeah.
We are one country. The success of individual provinces is not as critical as the success of the majority of our learners to leave school with a sense of achievement and a sense of hope for the future.
You know, it's certainly easy, for some of us to kind of say, we don't care what happens as long as, our own children are fine. But technically, it is our business, isn't it? I mean, you talk about the fact that we should be conscious of the many who have fallen along the way. The ones who fall along the way, what becomes of them later on in life? Surely that becomes our problem if some of them perhaps get into a life of crime. Should South Africans start to take more care as to what in fact happens to those matriculants who, as you put it, fall along the way?
Yeah, exactly. We need to celebrate the success of those who have succeeded, especially those who have overcome disadvantage. But we've got to remember that only the learners who succeed with the Matric and the NSC are only 37% of those who've started. The 63% who we've lost is the country's challenge. We have to change that very slow success rate, and we have to put much more energy into youth programs which give these bright and capable young people a sense that they can contribute, they can be included, there is a future for them. If we fail to do that, then I think that we will see exactly what you're talking about, people who despair and who become full of resentment because they feel betrayed.
Yeah, there were no incidents reported last year or this year in terms of leaked papers, cheating and so forth. So clearly this is, I suppose, a good reflection on the Department of Basic Education. What would you say they perhaps got right this time if you are to sort of analyze?
Well, Umalusi has the responsibility for quality assuring all of the NECs. So there's the DBE NSC, there's the IEB NSC, and there's other NECs. Part of their review process is absolutely ensuring that there have been no systemic irregularities such as leaking papers, mass cheating. And the Umalusi report for this year has confirmed that there were no major errors. Those errors are not a function of what the department does. It's a question of when people subvert the system for their personal gain, either by cheating or by procuring papers and distributing them. So it's a joint responsibility, both of the system and of individuals, to behave with integrity.
All right, Prof, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for giving us your time. That's Professor Mary Metcalf, who's, of course, an education expert, speaking to us about the upcoming Matric results.